will present tools which are nowadays commonly understood, which is the management cycle and the conceptual model. It was not the same situation we faced 10 years ago when we started the activity. It was not a common understanding, a common tool used for planning, used by managers of marine protected area. Although what was the situation we were facing at that time? Every single manager or managing staff had not a written document. They were all anyhow aware of what was the situation, but we were not used to write down, to report, document what is the situation we were facing on the present time. Anyhow, we were able to manage, but without providing any piece of written documentation, any piece of evidence or discussing among us. We were not unable to manage. We were not able to provide documentation supporting our choices, our strategies. That was the situation we were facing. We were lacking of a tool to guide on how to give the written support on our decision, on our objectives. How long to come back to measure, to provide indicators and so on. We were not used to take into consideration this kind of activity. Anyhow, we were doing, and most of the protected areas still are doing, I suppose, everywhere in the Mediterranean, they are still providing good work, but what is lacking, what is not in our cultural background, in the tools we use commonly, what is missing is this kind of habit to write down, to report, to provide written documentation of what are our choices. These were, well, a long time the SPAMIs which were added to the project. As I told you before, it started with 5 SPAMIs, it ended with 29 MPAs. The fundamental tool was the standards for project management issued by the CMP, Conservation Measures Partnership, which have developed their open standards. This is a consortium, a think tank made by several institutions. WWF is among them. IUCN and whatsoever, it is a big community. The vision of this partnership is more efficient and effective global conservation efforts, as we increasingly know how to leverage on or replicate what works and not repeat what doesn't, based upon credible measures of our effectiveness and the open sharing of lessons we learn. Measurement of effectiveness, sharing of lessons learned, and do not replicate what is not working. The tool, they developed the open standards as the goal to help teams being systematic about planning, implementing, and monitoring the conservation initiatives so they can learn what works, what does not work, and why, and adapt and improve efforts. This is the approach of the open standards. They require a few principles, basic principles. Involvement of stakeholders. development of partnerships, learning, document, and adjust. And this is the usual scheme I suppose everybody knows by heart. 5 steps, and I will go through. I suppose everybody already knows or is more or less aware of this management cycle, which is putting down the very first idea, planning actions, monitoring, implementing, analyzing, use and adapt, capture, share, and share learning. By the way, this is the edition, the last edition, while we were working. This edition is of 2013. We were working on the previous edition, slight changes here and there. Very first step, the starting point, conceptualize, where we define planning, purpose, and the project team. We select, well, we consider this is the very broad indication. We were inspired, but it is very hard to be able to go to follow each of these single points in a very effective way. It is very complicated to have time, the skills, and the support to go through every single point, to respect, to be strict and on every of these single points. We did try. It was quite hard, and in the real world, things are a little bit more practical. Anyhow, identify key skills needed and agree on roles and responsibilities. Very first step. Define scope, vision, and targets. This is fundamental point. This is really the key point. The project scope, the scope is the area, the site where we are intending to be active. It is overlapping with the boundaries of the marine protected area, usually. But usually, not always. For instance, I suppose Fabio has a broader vision, a broader scope than what is Miramare, as his work is also to keep an eye on what is going on the back of the seashore, what is happening in the rivers which flows to the sea. Develop a map of the project area, agree on the vision, on the project vision. The vision is, you do not define numbers, you only give an idea of what is your intent. Protecting biodiversity, it is a vision. Incrementing the biomass of 5% is a goal. An objective as a number, a vision is a broad indication, an idea. Select conservation targets, what we name key targets for conservation, what we will focus on, and describe the status of targets, the points you start from, what is the situation at the moment you start. Identifying critical threats and rank in case, which one is the most dangerous. And then the last point here, under number 1, it is analyze the conservation situation. After we did identify the pressures, the direct threats, we come to try to understand what are the drivers of these pressures and what are the opportunities. For instance, an opportunity could be getting in touch with a group of stakeholders, address them, create an initial conceptual model, the starting point of the conceptual model, and then to correct it with ground truth and revised and revision of the same model. This is step by step the starting point. Then we come to number 2, plan actions and monitoring activity. This is where we develop strategic planning. Goals, strategies, assumptions, objectives. And this is the new point which was in the last edition. We did not add this one when we used the cycle, clarifying socially beneficial results and human well-being targets. The new edition of the management of the open standards has an eye on ecosystem services, which was not inserted in the previous edition. Version 2 did not add don't made mention of the ecosystem services, and this is where they come out. Well, this is the group of the activities you are aiming to develop. And point 2b is the point of monitoring what you are doing. The key points are indicators and methods. You have to state, since the beginning, you have to state what will be your indicators. What is the measure, the units you will provide. You know the starting situation. We have seen it at step 1. Now we have to name indicators and the methods we will use to measure what is the situation and how the situation is changing after the efforts we are providing. And then the operational plan, it is simply the agenda, who is doing what, and what are the means needed. Vehicles, equipment, spaces, and so on. This is how to organize the work. So, what to do, how to measure what we are doing, the output of what we are doing, and the who, where, and how we'll do it. And this is, well, giving more detail on what we have stated at point 2. Short-term work plan, detailed activities, tasks, and responsibilities. I don't know why it is written 2 times. Timeline and calendar. Then 3.B, the budget. Estimate costs and activities and for activities and monitoring, funding proposals, and obtaining financial resources. And then implement plans. It means simply start working. Step 4, analyze, use, adapt. We are coming to the closing of the loop. We started with the work. We started planning. We start the work at this step, and now we take the time to look back over the shoulder and consider what are the results of what we have been doing. Prepare data for analysis. Develop system for recording, storing, processing, and backing up project data. 4B, analyze the results, either on biological results, but also operational and financial data, in order to know how much it did cost to do, and to consider if we can be more or less effective next time. Document discussions and decisions. And a key point, adapt the strategic plan, revise project documents, action plan, monitoring plan, operational plan, work plan, and budget. And this is the last point to close the loop. Document what are the results, publish or edit papers. Share learning by identifying the audiences, developing a communication strategy, report the results to project team and stakeholders, develop and share communication products, or even to use others' parts' communication products, and create a learning environment. This means sharing feedback formally or informally, conduct evaluation or audits at appropriate times, demonstrate commitment from leaders to learning and innovation, provide a safe environment for encouraging experimentation, and last, share success and failures with practitioners around the world. And this is, the loop is closed. Well, this is a very clear theoretical approach, and from my experience, I can tell you, well, this is the fundamental scheme. Most of the time we are a little bit more fast, and the idea is clear. We know how to proceed, and I already stated this point this morning. When you have to consider stakeholders, well, the time is getting longer. And most of the time it is difficult to find, we have difficulties in finding a real common and understood agreement among parts. We talk a lot about small-scale fisheries in marine protected area. There is a lot of talking about this issue. And I come from a marine area where fishing activity is no question, no point. We do not allow fishing inside the marine protected area. So many other protected areas have a small-scale fishing community operating, and well, it is very it is time and resources demanding to find a common agreement to close a management cycle when you have to really consider step by step all their needs and bring them. And from your side, you are doing a different work. You are doing a different job, which is conservation. They are fishermen. You are doing conservation. Doing conservation, having fishermen which agree on the fact that you are doing conservation, this means not allowing them to do fishing activity, it's a hard compromise to be found. I should say it is a little bit of excess of democracy, maybe. This is my very personal point of view. We are there to do, this is my personal opinion, as a practitioner for conservation, I'm doing a different work than not fishermen. I'm there to protect the environment. They are there to exploit environment. Inside the same area, it is hard. We can find, let's say, a common agreement on where to stop your exploitation or where to stop my conservation activity inside my protected area. It would not be the same. It would be different if we are asked to take an agreement outside the boundary of my protected area. So, in this approach, a zoning plan can be the tool, but we have to consider a wider area than not what is, in our experience, small marine protected areas. This is my personal point. I suppose everybody knows this management cycle, and we can pass directly to the next step.